My name is Tommy Chen, and I died at 42 in Chicago. But this isn't a sad story about a young genius gone too soon. This is the story of how two greedy siblings learned that messing with the wrong person can cost far more than they ever imagined. For 15 years, David and Lisa Chen treated me like an employee at a company built on my own inventions. They kept promising I'd be the majority partner when the time was right, while raking in millions from my brilliance. I believed them because they were family, because we grew up together, because when our parents died, they swore they'd always look out for me. When I was diagnosed with ALS, they put on a show of sadness in front of me. But behind the fake tears, they were already scheming how to steal everything I would invent before I died. They underestimated two important things. My assistant, Amy Park, was more loyal than they thought, and I still had one last card up my sleeve. A revolutionary battery technology worth $3 billion was almost finished. They had no idea. And when I died, they would find out the hard way that greed comes with a very high price. The reading of my will was broadcast live to them. I made sure to be there in video form, to see their faces when they realized the naive little brother had learned to play their game, and that I had won. Spectacularly. David and Lisa thought I would die a used-up fool. Instead, I created the perfect revenge, one that would make them pay, quite literally, for the rest of their miserable lives.
I grew up as the odd one out in the Chen family in Chicago. While my siblings, David and Lisa, shined in school with their charming personalities and athletic talents, I spent hours in the basement taking apart old radios and building gadgets no one understood. David, 3 years older, was the captain of the basketball team. Lisa, 2 years older, was a cheerleader and student council president. I was just the weird kid who talked more to electric circuits than to people. My parents, Wang and Mei Chen, were immigrants from Guangzhou who arrived in the late 70s. They worked 16 hours a day at the Golden Dragon, our family restaurant on North Clark Street. Dad was the cook, while Mom waited tables, and they dreamed that their kids would have better lives than they did. David would be a doctor, Lisa a lawyer, and me? Well, they weren't quite sure what to make of me. "Tommy very smart, but very quiet," Mom would say to her friends. "Always playing with wires and machines. We don't understand, but he's happy." They really didn't understand. When I won my first science fair at age 12 with a solar charger prototype, Dad just smiled politely and said, "Very good, Sonny." But when David scored the game-winning touchdown at the state championship, they closed the restaurant to celebrate. I don't hold a grudge for that. They loved us all the best way they knew how. And David and Lisa, even though they were the stars, were never cruel to me. David would stand up to bullies on my behalf, and Lisa always invited a few of my nerdy friends to her parties. We were a close family, despite our differences. The tragedy that changed everything happened when I was 25. Mom and Dad were driving home late from a supplier meeting when a drunk driver ran a red light on Lakeshore Drive. The impact was instant. They died on the spot. The funeral was devastating. Hundreds of people came. Restaurant customers, neighbors, friends. Everyone had a story about how Wang and Mei Chen had helped them. When the will was read, we found out they had been more prepared than we thought. The life insurance, savings, and the restaurant's value totaled $1.2 million. David, as the oldest, naturally took charge of the inheritance. Lisa fully supported him. I was too lost in grief to question anything. They sold the restaurant and met with me in the small living room of the house we grew up in. "Tommy," David said, using that fatherly tone he'd had since we were kids, "we know you've always been the brains of the family. You've got incredible ideas, but, well, you're not really great with people or the business side of things." Lisa nodded. "Why don't we turn the inheritance into a tech company? You create the inventions, and we'll handle the business. It'd be perfect." It sounded like a brilliant idea, I really was terrible with paperwork, contracts, and all the business bureaucracy. David had an MBA from Northwestern, and Lisa had a business degree from DePaul. They knew business, I knew tech. It was the perfect split. When the company grows, David promised, you'll be the majority partner. After all, without your inventions, we've got nothing. You're the heart of the operation, Tommy. Lisa smiled warmly. You'll get your fair share, more than fair. We just need to structure things the right way first. And that's how Chen Technologies was born. I supplied the brains, they handled the business muscle. For the first few years, it ran like clockwork. My first 3 patents, a wireless charging system, an energy optimization algorithm, and an ultra-compact temperature sensor, brought in around $300,000 in licensing. David filed everything under Chen Technologies, with himself as CEO and Lisa as CFO. I held the title of Director of Research and Development, but in practice, I was just a very well-paid employee. It's not the right time for you to be a partner yet, they always said. We need to stabilize the company first. It was 15 years of not the right time.
The years blurred by in a haze of prototypes, testing, and meetings where I was introduced as our resident genius, but never consulted on major decisions. Chen Technologies grew from a small rented office in Wicker Park to a sleek corporate complex in River North. David bought a mansion in Lincoln Park. Lisa moved into a penthouse in Gold Coast. I kept living in the same apartment in Logan Square I'd rented since my 20s. Not that I ever cared much about luxury. My happiness came from the lab, creating things that had never existed before. With every new patent filed, David and Lisa assured me that this time would be different, that now they'd really bring me in as a partner. But years turned into decades, and I continued receiving only my fixed director's salary. At 35, I hired Amy Park as my research assistant. Amy was a young Korean-American who graduated in electrical engineering from the University of Illinois, brilliant as a star and with a work ethic that matched my own. More importantly, she genuinely cared about the science behind the inventions, not just the profits they might bring. Mr. Chen, your energy optimization patents are revolutionary. Working with you will be like getting a PhD under Einstein. Amy quickly became more than an assistant. She was my protege, my research partner, and over time, like the daughter I never had. While David and Lisa only saw our work through spreadsheets and financial projections, Amy understood the elegant beauty of a perfectly designed circuit. Together, we developed 6 new patents that generated over $15 million in licensing revenue. Chen Technologies was listed among the 50 most promising tech companies in the Midwest. David made the cover of Chicago Business Magazine as the visionary behind the energy revolution. Lisa was named CFO of the Year by the Chicago Women Executives Association. I wasn't even mentioned in the articles. It's a marketing strategy, Tommy, David explained when I asked why. If people find out you're the real brain behind everything, other companies will try to poach you. Better to keep you as our trade secret. At 40, I started noticing strange symptoms. First, a subtle weakness in my right leg. Then barely noticeable tremors in my hands while working with small components. Amy was the first to notice. "Mr. Chen, are you okay? Your hands are shaking a little." I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Robert Martinez, a renowned neurologist at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. After 2 grueling weeks of tests, MRIs, EMGs, muscle biopsies, he brought me into his office with a look I'll never forget. "Thomas, I'm sorry, but you have amyotrophic lateral sclerosis,
ALS, what people commonly call Lou Gehrig's disease. The world stopped. ALS was a death sentence with a countdown. "How long?" I asked, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. 2 to 5 years, typically. Some patients last longer, others less. There's no cure, but we can slow the progression with medication and therapy. I drove home on autopilot, my mind processing the news like a complex engineering problem. I had at most 5 years to finish all the projects I'd worked my entire life on. 5 years to make sure my legacy didn't die with me. The next night, I called David and Lisa and asked them to come to my apartment. They arrived together like they always did when it was a family business matter. "I have something important to tell you. I've been diagnosed with ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis." The silence that followed was deafening. David was the first to react, standing to hug me. "Oh my God, Tommy! We're here for you. Whatever you need, whatever it takes." Lisa cried. Real tears, or at least they looked real. "We'll find the best doctors, no matter the cost." They said all the right things, made all the right noises, but something in their eyes disturbed me. A split second where I thought I saw not sorrow, but calculation. In the weeks that followed, they started acting strangely. Meetings started happening without me. Conversations would stop abruptly when I entered the room. David began insisting I document all my ideas and processes so the company wouldn't lose valuable institutional knowledge. "It's just a precaution, Tommy," he said. "We want to make sure your legacy is protected." Amy noticed the change too. "Mr. Chen, something weird is going on. Yesterday, I overheard David talking to Lisa about accelerating the transition. When they saw me, they changed the subject right away." My suspicion turned to certainty one Thursday afternoon in October. Amy was working late in the lab when she received an email clearly not meant for her. It was from David, intended for Lisa, but due to a system glitch, it was sent to Amy instead. The subject was Plan T. Amy printed the email and rushed to my apartment. Her hands were shaking as she handed me the paper. From David to Lisa. Subject, Plan T. Lisa, spoke with the lawyer today. He confirmed that if we can document that Tommy is mentally incapacitated due to disease progression, we can take full control of all patents registered in his name. We can also file anything new he develops as company intellectual property, since he's technically working under supervision. The doctor said most ALS patients develop cognitive decline in later stages. We need to make sure everything is registered to us before he becomes too incapacitated to contest it. Tommy hasn't much time left. We need to be ready when it happens. David.
Lisa's reply was attached. From Lisa Chen to David Chen. Subject, R.E. Plan T. Perfect. Once he dies, we'll own everything without having to split anything. He was always too naive to understand how business really works. Honestly, finally, I'm tired of pretending we're going to bring him in as a partner someday. I've already started scouting engineers to replace him. Obviously, no one has his talent, but we don't need groundbreaking innovation forever. We can live off the royalties from the existing patents for decades. What do you think about hiring that Amy as a consultant afterward? She knows all of Tommy's projects and would be cheaper than training someone from scratch. Lisa. It felt like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just greed. It was cold, calculated betrayal by the people I had loved all my life. They weren't just waiting for me to die. They were actively planning to steal everything I had created. Amy was crying by the time she finished reading. "Mr. Chen, I'm so sorry. I can't believe how could they?" "It's okay, Amy," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "Actually, they just gave me a gift." "A gift?" "They showed their true faces before it was too late to do something about it." That night, I began to craft my plan. I had secretly been working on my masterpiece for the past 3 years, a revolutionary battery technology using carbon nanotubes and an electrolyte I developed with a unique blend of lithium and magnesium. In early tests, the batteries lasted 10 times longer than conventional ones and charged in 1/10 the time. It was a technology that would completely disrupt the electric vehicle industry. Tesla, Ford, GM, every automaker would kill for this patent. Conservatively, it was worth $3 billion, potentially much more. David and Lisa knew nothing about the project. I'd only worked on it during weekends and nights, with Amy as my sole collaborator. Officially, it was just exploratory research that didn't even appear in corporate reports. "Amy," I said, "we need to talk about your future. The last 18 months of my life were a performance worthy of an Oscar. I pretended my condition was making me increasingly confused and dependent. When David and Lisa visited the lab, I deliberately leave circuits half-assembled, forget the names of basic components, and ask for help with things I'd always done myself. "See how he's getting worse?" David would whisper to Lisa, thinking I couldn't hear. "It won't be long before he can't work anymore." Lisa would nod. "It's sad, but at least he's still productive. We need to make the most of it while he can still contribute." They became so confident in my supposed mental decline that they started openly discussing their plans in front of me. David hired 3 new engineers to support Tommy during the transition. Lisa began meeting with intellectual property law firms to protect the company's assets. Meanwhile, Amy and I were finalizing our quiet revolution. We worked through the nights, refining the battery formula, testing prototypes, and meticulously documenting every breakthrough. In January 2024, we discreetly filed the patent, not under Chen Technologies, under our own names. Thomas Chen and Amy Park, inventors. Amy Park, owner of 80% of the rights. The patent was approved in July, 3 months before my death. During that time, I also completely rewrote my will. I used a different law firm, far away from the corporate attorneys David and Lisa knew. I left specific instructions. The reading of the will had to be recorded and broadcast live to all beneficiaries. I wanted to be there, even if only on video. I died on a Tuesday in October, at home, with Amy holding my hand. My final moments were peaceful, knowing everything was set in motion. The funeral went exactly as I predicted. David and Lisa arranged a grand ceremony at Graceland Cemetery, attended by hundreds, Chen Technologies clients, industry colleagues, even a few tech journalists. They portrayed themselves as the grieving siblings who lost the family genius. "Tommy was more than my brother," David said during the eulogy, his voice trembling with what seemed like genuine emotion. "He was my inspiration. Everything we achieved at Chen Technologies was because of his brilliance. His legacy will live on through the work we continue." Lisa cried beautifully during her speech. "He was so kind, so generous with his knowledge. He always put family first. We'll honor his memory by continuing the company he helped build." Amy sat quietly in the back row. When our eyes met, she gave a slight nod. Everything was ready. The will reading was scheduled for the following Friday at the office of Harold Blackwood, the attorney I had hired. David and Lisa arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in sober suits with appropriately solemn expressions. Amy arrived precisely on time, carrying a leather folder they assumed contained work documents. "Before we begin," Blackwood announced, "Thomas left very specific instructions. He wished to be present during the reading of his will. He recorded a video message that must be played first." David and Lisa exchanged confused glances, but agreed. Blackwood opened a laptop and turned on a projector. My image appeared on the wall. Recorded 3 months before my death, back when I could still speak clearly. "Hello, David." "Hello, Lisa." They shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "If you're watching this, it means I'm finally dead. I hope you enjoyed all those years exploiting me, because the party's over." The color drained from their faces. "Surprise! I found out about your little Plan T. Amy showed me those lovely emails where you planned to steal everything I would ever invent and eagerly waited for me to die. Very touching, really." David tried to stand, but Blackwood motioned him to remain seated. "You always underestimated me. Thought I was too naive to understand business. The truth is, I understand business just fine. I just believed family meant something. That was my mistake." On screen, I smiled. A smile they'd never seen before. "For the past 3 years, I've been working on a revolutionary battery technology. You know nothing about it because I worked on it in secret. The patent is worth approximately $3 billion. And before you ask, no, it does not belong to Chen Technologies." Lisa turned white as a sheet. "The patent was filed under my name and Amy Park's name. And according to my will, Amy now owns 80% of that technology. The other 20% has been donated to the ALS Research Foundation." Amy opened her folder and laid the patent documents on the table. "But wait, there's more. Since my technology will be essential to the automotive industry in the coming years, any company that wants to use it, including Chen Technologies, will have to pay royalties. To Amy. Forever." David finally found his voice. "This is impossible. You worked for our company. Anything you developed belongs to us." "Check the employment contract," I said on screen, as if I could hear him. "You never made me sign an intellectual property clause because you always assumed I was too dumb to create anything on my own. Another flaw in your Plan T." The video continued for another 5 minutes, detailing every legal step and making it crystal clear that everything had been reviewed and approved by a team of specialized attorneys. When it ended, the room fell into absolute silence. Amy finally spoke. "David, Lisa, you have 2 options. You can continue running Chen Technologies and pay 15% royalties on any product using the battery technology, which, with the shift to electric vehicles, will be practically everything in the coming years, or you can sell the company. Either way," she added with a sweet smile, "you'll be working for me now."
The transformation was immediate and brutal. Amy Park, the simple assistant David and Lisa had always treated like furniture, became one of the richest women in America overnight. The revolutionary battery patent attracted licensing offers from Tesla, Ford, GM, and virtually every major car manufacturer in the world. David and Lisa tried to contest the will, of course. They spent $2 million on lawyers over 6 months before realizing I had been too meticulous. Every document was flawless. Every procedure had been followed to the letter. The court dismissed their challenge and ordered them to cover Amy's legal fees. Chen Technologies, no longer profitable without my new inventions, began hemorrhaging money when the royalties kicked in. 15% of everything they produced went straight to Amy. They tried pivoting the company's focus, but discovered that without my brilliance, they were just two mediocre managers in a fiercely competitive industry. 18 months after my death, they sold the company to a Chinese conglomerate for a fraction of what it had been worth at its peak. David moved to Phoenix and now sells insurance. Lisa works as an accountant for a mid-sized firm in Milwaukee. Neither of them ever forgave me, as if I were the villain in this story. Amy, on the other hand, thrived. She used the fortune to establish the Chen Institute for ALS Research, which has already funded groundbreaking studies on the disease. 3 years after my death, she married a young medical researcher she met at a conference. They now have a son, Thomas Park Williams, named in my honor. Sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh. Then I let the guilt fade. David and Lisa showed exactly who they were when they thought I couldn't defend myself. They turned the final years of my life into a humiliating performance, eagerly waiting for me to die so they could steal everything I had built. I simply made sure they got exactly what they deserved. And Amy, who stayed loyal when loyalty came at a cost, received the reward she truly earned. Revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes, when done right, it can also be justice.